Hello everyone, it's great seeing you again, and thanks for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 13th day of June 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphics. There are no watches, warnings, or advisories anywhere around the state for the next couple of days. In fact, maybe not until next September. So jumping right into satellite imagery. Low pressure, northwest bearing there, and a front you can see from the cloudiness from west of St. Lawrence Island right down across St. Matthew Island to just west of the Pribilofs, trailing into the Amchitka Island area, Kiska there, and basically the entire Bering Sea cloudy. Looks like a few breaks though around Shimia, and also the Alaska Peninsula, seeing a few breaks there. That's actually on the lee side of the peninsula, meaning southeast winds, downsloping enough, so the clouds aren't all that thick, with the peninsula breaking them open there as they come across, as the winds come across the peninsula, resulting in some clearing on the north shore there. Otherwise, back into clouds into Bristol Bay, areas of the Yukon Delta, to a lesser extent Kuskokwim Delta, pretty cloudy Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, up into the northwest coast, locally into the Kobuk Valley, Kelly area, where actually Kelly picked up about, let's see, 1/10 of an inch of precipitation, 1/1500ths of an inch of precipitation in some rainfall there in the last 12 hours in mid-afternoon. Interior, though, lots of sunshine, and temperatures warming into the mid-70s over the Yukon Flats, 75, Chalkyitsik, one of the warmer locations. But still, even the Fairbanks area not far off that mark, around lower to mid-70s at early to mid-afternoon. Same thing for the Susitna Valley, East Anchorage, Kenai Peninsula. Kind of a contrast on the peninsula there. Southwest wind about 20 miles an hour at Kenai Nikolsky. Nikolsky had a temperature of 51 degrees at the same time. Ski Lac Lake, 72 degrees and sunshine there. So really contrasting whether you're getting a breeze off the inlet or not. Prince William Sound looking mostly sunny. Copper River Basin, same thing. Panhandle, lots of sunshine today, especially over the central northern areas. A few more clouds down toward the Dixon entrance area, but still pretty nice conditions. Shelter Cove down that way rose to 76 degrees. Kloak was into the lower 70s as well, and 70s actually all the way into the Kuskokwim Valley down northeast Bristol Bay. And rolling that through again, you can see the clouds starting to build along the Alaska Range and over the mountainous terrain up there southwest of Arctic Village. Some cumulus and resulting shower activity, but nothing heavy at this point, just mainly along the mountainous terrain in the central eastern interior there. And again, rainfall amounts with that system out west, Tin City at about 7/100ths of an inch in a 12-hour period. Kotzebue picked up 3/100ths of an inch. And Nome 600, so nothing really heavy there, and showers into the Yukon Delta. And not a lot of rain with that front over the eastern Aleutians, just less than 1/10 of an inch for the most part there in the areas that I saw the reports from for the Fox Islands. But winds, more of a factor there. You had winds kicking up to, let's see, gusts 30 miles an hour down Alaska. Cold Bay had a peak wind gust of 40 miles an hour there. And then Nikolsky there, Unmak Island, gust 52 miles an hour, peak wind gust there. So a fairly active front wind-wise and not so much precipitation-wise. Up on the Arctic coast, generally low clouds and fog. There was actually dense fog earlier today toward Barter Island, Kaktovik there. Showers in the eastern Brooks Range, Arctic Village developing in the afternoon. For tonight, whatever those develop will linger and then slowly diminish. Just a risk of an isolated shower after midnight, mainly over the Talkeetna Mountain or the Wrangell Mountains, and maybe toward Eagle or north on the north side of the Yukon River, which is north of Eagle, and the eastern Brooks Range. Nothing significant, but windy conditions could see gusts continuing in that 40-mile-an-hour range for Cold Bay. And the winds, less wind for the eastern Aleutians, becoming much lighter there with the front pressing eastward. Rain possibly moderate on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, but an area of rain extending from the eastern Aleutians Alaska Peninsula northward across Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island, western Seward Peninsula into the DeLong Mountains, northwest coast, western Arctic coast. Chance of showers up to about Point Lay, maybe Wainwright. Otherwise, low clouds and fog for the remainder of the Arctic coast, and increasing shower chances also for the southern central panhandle. That low west of the Queen Charlotte's kind of swinging couple of surges of moisture northwestward into the area there, but it won't get much farther. If it gets as far north as Petersburg, it won't get any farther than that, maybe Sitka, and that's about it, staying fair and dry to the north. For tomorrow, though, different story. That moisture just kind of stream northwestward up into the Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, maybe catching Yakutat across the eastern Alaska Range, northeastern Copper River Basin. Otherwise fair and warmer in the interior, again looking possibly into the lower 80s for the greater Fairbanks area, near 80 in the Yukon Flats, and definitely well into the 70s for the remainder of the interior of the state, except out toward the west coast. More of a marine influence there, obviously, with the clouds and the green, indicating periods of rain, fog, and drizzle for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Bering Straits, western Seward Peninsula, Kivalina, hopefully staying west of Kotzebue, and the western Arctic coast under a threat, and then showers for the eastern Aleutians. Next warm front spreads kind of a warm front type weather, which means low clouds, fog, IFR, and drizzle, light rain into the western Aleutian areas, and showery for the Panhandle. And we'll see on Tuesday that system kind of kicks off to the southeast, low pressure now, just west-southwest of Nikolsky, or just east-southeast of Atka Island. So rain, fog, drizzle, low clouds there. And that area of moisture that was along the west coast now pushes inland, really weakens, kind of just some remnant moisture along the Yukon River Valley there in the form of scattered to maybe something a little more scattered shower activity, definitely cloudy skies. And that extends to Nunivak Island into the Pribilofs. Alaska Peninsula stays unsettled, but lighter amounts of precipitation, wind no factor. Chance of thunderstorms over the Talkeetna Mountains now in the western Copper River Basin in the afternoon, with temperatures forecast into the mid-80s for the Tanana Valley on up toward Chokyitzik for Yukon, and near 80 northern Kuskokwim Valley with temperatures into the 70s. Well into the 70s to Sitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, temperatures possibly in the lower 70s. Not so for the Panhandle, a little cooler with a little more widespread shower activity lingering throughout the day Tuesday there. Taking a look at, let's see, lows for tonight for the Panhandle, upper 40s to lower 50s, warmest in the south, and 45 to 50 about sums it up here for south central Alaska, Copper River Basin, lower to mid 40s, lower 40s though for the areas near the inlet, Homer, and Soldotna, Kenai, lower 40s there, upper 40s Kodiak Island, mid to upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, lower 40s for the Aleutians, central and western Aleutians, 46 for Unalaska, 42 for the Pribilofs, and mid 30s St. Lawrence Island, western Seward Peninsula, Shishmaref, and Point Hope, Cape Lisburne. Near the frost point for the areas from Barrow to Kaktovik. Otherwise, lower to mid 50s in the central interior, followed by highs in the mid 70s to lower 80s at 82, right there at Fairbanks, 81 for Yukon, Chokyitzik, maybe Beaver, near 80 for Eagle, and 70s out to Ambler, 71 degrees, McGrath, Nikolai, 77, near 70 in Bristol Bay, mid 70s to Sitna Valley, upper 70s Copper River Basin, Kenai Peninsula again, lower to mid 70s, and 60s for the Panhandle to near 70, and lows right around 50 for the southeast coast on Tuesday morning, upper 40s, lower 50s, southern Alaska, mid 40s, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, lower 40s, Aleutians, right around 40 for the Pribilofs, 30s for the Arctic coast, some areas lower 40s, and mid to upper 50s for the central interior. Highs, mid 80s there, Fairbanks area, central Tanana Valley, up into the upper Yukon River zone, Yukon Flats, Porcupine River, also lower 80s, 83 there at Eagle, and otherwise, highs contrasted there, only in the mid to upper 50s for the southeast coast. Klawock, Craig, maybe Ketchikan might push 61, but clouds and showers keeping it cooler there. Right around 70, northern Cook Inlet, probably in the 60s for the Kenai Peninsula, near 70 away from the inlet, near 80 Copper River Basin, mid 70s northern Kuskokwim Valley, cooler out toward the west coast, with highs upper 40s along the coastline to lower to mid 50s, inland areas of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, 46 at Nome, but 39 at Shishmaref. Notice the 60 degrees up there at, let's see, Prudhoe Bay, and 44 for Point Barrow, with temperatures mid 40s to near 50 for the Aleutians. And the Pribilofs highs about upper 40s there. Low clouds, fog keeping a little cooler through the Bering Strait. Again, Tin City 39, maybe 43 at Savunga. Otherwise, Kodiak Island, 60 to maybe 70 away from the coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tomorrow's flying weather graphic. Tomorrow morning, you got IFR central and most of the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and then IFR there from the northwest coast, actually Cape Lisburne, through the Bering Strait, and covering the entire Bering Sea, or at some point across, or for tomorrow morning, pretty good chance of running in some IFR at times anywhere over the Aleutian chain, right up to the south coast of the Alaska Peninsula, southern Kodiak Island, Sitkinak, maybe Akiak, and marginal VFR eastern North Gulf Coast and the coastal areas of the Panhandle, but marginal VFR also looks like in across Dixon Entrance up into Clarence Strait, possibly as far north as Wrangell or Petersburg on the east side there. Otherwise, VFR in the interior, and for the afternoon, we're looking at about the same, nothing but good VFR interior Alaska, including the North Slope and maybe even a little bit of the Arctic coast. Otherwise, IFR holds out over the Bering Sea. Throw some marginal in there just to keep it interesting. In the central Bering Sea, Aleutian socked in IFR, Alaska Peninsula, south side IFR, north side possible VFR. Kodiak Island, lowest conditions again towards Sitkinak, Fogneck Island in the VFR zone, interior VFR, North Gulf Coast, just grazing areas of marginal VFR, Cape St. Elias, for example, Panhandle, pretty marginal. And for the morning on Tuesday, not a lot of change with the IFR covering just about all the Bering Sea, and again, throw some marginal in there over Atka, and Bristol Bay marginal VFR, and marginal VFR also inland across the Yukon Delta, portion of the Kuskokwim Delta, up across the northwest interior and the Arctic coast. VFR interior Alaska, maybe some marginal VFR trying to push into Kachemak Bay, southern Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, probably not getting any farther north than Montague Island. And IFR, lower conditions now over the Panhandle, IFR along the coast and over the southern and northern areas, including Yakutat, and then that pulls back to the west on Tuesday, kind of an easterly wave moving from east to west there, so look for lowering conditions into Prince William Sound Tuesday afternoon, southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, marginal VFR for the Panhandle, IFR out over the Bering Sea through the Strait, and looks like off the Arctic coast, marginal VFR areas of the Arctic coast, western Brooks Range, especially the southern slopes with that southerly flow, looking at marginal VFR, as well as Yukon Delta and Cape Nuanam, Togiak Bay. Passes good VFR, Brooks Range, for both Adigan and Anatuvik. VFR either approach throughout the day, Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, in fact, the entire Alaska range, VFR tomorrow through the afternoon on both approaches. Isabel, no different, and Tasta also VFR, Tanita VFR, and Portage VFR. Chilkoot and White, though, marginal VFR trending toward VFR, or at some point in the day, you could see some marginal VFR. And for the freezing levels, west of St. Lawrence Island, we've got 2,000 feet, sloping up to 10,000 feet there south of Nunivak Island and over the Pribilofs, as well as the east central Aleutians, about 8,000 feet or so over the interior and the Panhandle. Icing with that band of moisture in the southerly flow there on the western side of the upper ridge. Could be some areas of considerable moderate terrain enhanced type icing there, Alaska Peninsula, southwest coast, Seward Peninsula, and the DeLong Mountains. Maybe another batch out there over the western Aleutians, and chance of some mixed icing over the southern southeast coast. And that really becomes isolated as you head north. And the jet stream showing upper level high pressure ridged right up across the central interior areas with southerly flow on the west side of that, 90 to 105 knots, catching St. Lawrence Island and St. Matthew Island, turns westerly over the north slope, and then northerly, 35, picking up to 60 knots there over the Susitna Valley down toward Kodiak Island, southeast 40, just clipping the Stewart-Hyder area in the Panhandle, and at 9,000 feet, 65 knot southerlies there east of St. Lawrence Island. From the Yukon Delta coast, 40 to 65 knots right up to Cape Lisburne, and 3,000 feet, 40 to 50 knots over the western interior, and northerlies 35 knots for the central Aleutians, mostly Atka, but not quite making it to Nikulski, and 40 knotters just south of the western Aleutians. Turbulence-wise, look for moderate chop, Bering Strait, western Seward Peninsula, Yukon Delta down to Cape Newenham, and the lee side of the Alaska Peninsula. After the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us today is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
My pleasure, Dave.
Thank you. And you're joining us here to talk a little bit more about satellites and how satellites work, and especially one neat feature that's working over Alaska right now. What is that?
Well, there's a lot of weather satellites and a lot of instruments on these satellites, and there are new generations going up and new instruments. This includes something called the day-night band, which is not a cover band at the local bar, but it's a new satellite that is very useful, especially here in Alaska, especially in the winter.
In the wintertime, yeah, that makes it a little bit hard to use some of the normal tools that we associate with weather satellite imagery.
Right. You know, one of the classic weather satellite instruments is just visible light. What would the human eye see if you were riding on a weather satellite yourself and looked down and it was black and white? You'd see the clouds reflecting the sunlight. And we've got an example from the Pacific Ocean. There's a geostationary satellite, and we can see that the eastern side of the image is in daylight. The western side, it's night over there, so you don't see anything because there's no sunlight over there. And visible imagery, it's very intuitive. You see the clouds just like you see them standing on the ground, but now you're a satellite seeing them from above. But the problem is, what about the night side of the planet? How do you track the storms? How do you know where the rain is, the snow, the weather, if you can't see the clouds? And that's why, just like a television can change from one channel to another, or a radio can change stations, satellites can change the frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum that they're looking at. We can go to infrared instead of visible light. You know, it's heat energy. You can see heat, and we've got another satellite picture from the same time, same satellite, out over the Pacific Ocean. That's the infrared side. And we're seeing temperature there. And even at night, when there's no light, everything still has a temperature.
So we're sensing something with a thermometer instead of perhaps the visible side of that, is what you're saying?
That's right. On this depiction, colder features are lighter shades, warmer features are dark. And so clouds tend to be colder than the ground. Clouds are higher in the atmosphere, it's cooler. And so that very same image on the western or the left-hand side of the globe, now we can see the clouds there, even though it's nighttime, because we're seeing the temperatures. And one nice feature is that tropical storm there, just in the middle of the northern hemisphere there, hurricane or typhoon, depending
That's that
on
swirly part that we see in the middle of the image?
There you go. You can even see the eye on it there, especially in the infrared image. So we've got two kinds of imagery there from the same satellite, different instruments, you know, different channels like on a television, visible and infrared. You know, it turns out there's no one magic tool. Each has its strengths, each has its flaws, weaknesses. The visible is nice, it's intuitive, it's easy to understand, but doesn't work at night. Infrared is nice, it works at night, you can see temperatures, but there is a catch. What if your clouds and the nearby bare ground or open water, what if those were about the same temperature?
Oh, that's going to be hard to figure out what's going on.
If you can only see temperature and you have two features that are the same temperature, they will look the same. You won't be able to tell. They're camouflaged. This happens, especially, it can happen around Alaska, especially over the ocean when you have low clouds that are the same temperature as the open water.
That happens quite a bit in Alaska.
We have an example. Now, this is from a different geostationary satellite. It's down over the Atlantic Ocean. Look in the South Atlantic. In infrared, we've highlighted in a yellow circle there. There's some patches of clouds, but it looks like there's a clear area in the middle of that image.
Sure. Yep.
That's the infrared look. But let's take a look at the visible channel, and we can see there's a stripe of clouds across the middle of that circle that is only visible in the visible.
Okay, right.
The trick here is that those are low clouds of about the same temperature as the surrounding ocean. So from an infrared point of view, where you're seeing temperature, the clouds in the water nearby are the same temperature, they look the same. It's only on the visible that you can see what stands out as the actual imagery. Two tools, each have their strengths and weaknesses. Can we combine them? That's where the day-night band comes in. It's a super sensitive visible sensor that can actually see by moonlight. It can even see the aurora. And in Alaska, we have long winter nights. We can use that day-night band. Here's an example from that storm that blew the Kullik drilling platform ashore near Kodiak Island in December back in 2012. This image is right near when that storm happened, and it's in the middle of the night. in December.
But this looks like visible imagery.
Looks like daytime imagery. It's amazing. That sensor can take any little bit of moonlight and just make the most of it. And we can see so much detail. Even in the northern part of the image there, you can see some aurora up there. The northern lights
That's that band that goes across the Arctic slope?
You got it. That's the northern lights. We're seeing black and white image here, so you don't get the green or the purple colors there. But that is the aurora. There's another example of the day-night band, and this is from January of 2013. It's about 4 in the morning, and this is a snapshot from Weather Service software. And we can even see in the middle of the image, there's the lights of Fairbanks and North Pole over to Eielson Air Force Base. Anchorage and Matsu lights, city lights, are evident as well. Sure, we can see, even though it's 4 in the morning in January, there is no sunlight to be had, that just enough moonlight is available that this sensor can see that. So we're trying to solve that puzzle where visible light is good, but only during the daytime. IR is good at night, but you can't see the difference between clouds and ground sometime. The day-night band is an attempt to do the best of both with one tool. And it's brand new for Alaska here, and we're hoping to use it in the forecast process and help predict storms, weather patterns, to help get good forecasts for people.
Okay, another tool in the weather toolkit for meteorologists in Alaska and researchers worldwide. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us today. And you can learn more about GINA and the day-night band by going to the web address that you see on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the coastal waters for the Panhandle Monday. Extreme north coast there, eastern North Gulf Coast, westerlies at 10 knots. And for the central coast, east winds 15 knots, 4 to 6 feet. And along the coast of Prince of Wales Island, southeasterlies 20 knots, seas 6 feet. Clarence Strait about the same, southeast winds at 20 knots. Central northern inside waters, winds will be southeast primarily at the speed of 10 to 15 knots. And then for Tuesday, we've got Lynn Canal, south 15, and Stevens Passage looking at a southeast breeze at 10 knots. South winds at 10 knots there for the Clarence Strait area, pretty slight seas. Light winds on the south coast, in fact, light winds all along the coast. South coast south to southeast at 10 knots, seas 4 feet. 5-knot winds from the south and southwest. On the north coast, seas at 3 feet. And from there, going to Prince William Sound. Light westerlies are variable to west tomorrow at 10 knots, 2-foot seas. Same thing, Cook Inlet, variable to west at 10 with slight seas. Kamishak Bay, southeast at 15 knots. Barren Islands, southwest at 15 knots. North Gulf Coast, west winds at 10 knots. Outlook for Tuesday, southwest 10 knots. Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, North Gulf Coast, and Prince William Sound. Seas running 2 to 3 feet at the most. Cook Inlet, southwest breeze, 15 knots in the afternoon, 3 to 4 foot seas. And actually gale warnings there on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Southeast wind sustained, 35 knots, seas just under 10 feet. Southeast 30 knots on the Pacific side of the peninsula. Sitkinak to Castle Cape. We've got southeasterlies for small craft advisories at 25 knots, and south 15 for Kodiak Island, southeast 15 for Shelikof Strait, and small craft advisories for Bristol Bay. Southeast sustained, 25 knots, but seas only 4 feet. Those fall back to about 15 knots out of the east for Bristol Bay on Tuesday, and 20 knots on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula from the east. Small craft advisories, Cape Sarachev to Sitkinak. East winds 25 knots, 7 to 9 foot seas. East winds 10 knots, so laying down pretty good there for Kodiak Island and the surrounding vicinity, with seas running 2 to 4 feet. And we've got variable winds there for Unalaska Island tomorrow, 10 to 20 knots, 7 foot seas. Umak Island north 20 to 25 knots. Northwest 25, Adak and Atka, and northwest 20, Amchitka Island, and way out west, we look at east winds at 20 knots with 5 foot seas. And then for Shimia to Kiska, north winds at 15 for Tuesday. Amchitka looking at northwest winds 20 knots. And depending on what side of the islands you're on there for Adak and Atka, they'll either be out of the northeast at 20 knots or southwest at 25 knots. Unmak Island, call it north to west at 15 knots, while on Alaska Island, a little more uniform there, at with north winds 15 knots and 5 to 7 foot seas. Southwest coast on Monday, small craft advisories. Let's see, for winds 25 to 30 knots, 5 to 8 foot seas. St. Lawrence Island, southeast of 20 knots with 4-foot seas, and the Pribilofs on the backside of that front looking at northerlies at 20 knots with 6-foot seas, and just 15 knots out of the west for St. Matthew Island. And then for the day on Tuesday, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, southwest 10 to 15 knots, and east 20 knots, Kuskokwim Delta coast, Yukon Delta lighter out of the north at 15, and north 15 for the Pribilofs. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, well actually the central and east coast, 20 knots out of the east, southeast 20 there for the west side, all the way down to Wales. And then on Tuesday, from Wales to Cape Beaufort, winds will be south at 20 knots, seas 4 to 5 feet. Small craft advisories for the western Arctic coast, southeast or southwest 25 knots with 6-foot seas, 20 knots for the central coast from the southwest, and then southeast winds for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, southeast 15 to 20 knots. For tonight, look for continued low clouds, fog there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Showery to areas of light rain, fog, and drizzle for the west side into the Nalong Mountains, especially Kivalina, western Seward Peninsula. Showers for the Nome White Mountain area. Area precipitation extends down to windier conditions for the Alaska Peninsula with periods of rain. Showers central Aleutians clear over the interior, and showers increase chance-wise for the central and southern panhandle, and that kind of expands northwestward tomorrow all the way into the southeast interior for a chance of showers, and stays wet and unsettled along the entire west coast, Alaska Peninsula, and eastern Aleutians on Monday. Next warm front spreading some moisture into the western Aleutians, but that becomes a non-factor as high pressure replaces that and stays showery and unsettled for the central and eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. And that area of moisture shifts inland along the lower Yukon River Valley for mostly cloudy skies.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.